welcome Sisters Loved by God to session 5 of our Children of the Day Bible study. I don't know about you, but I have missed not seeing your faces. I know that this is very logical for what we're doing, but I just want you to know I think about you and I'm praying over you and what you're going to get out of this Bible study. Now this last week, I'm hoping what you got out of it was that our love, humility, our boldness in evangelism, and even our rejoicing can grow more and more. And I think of a sand timer. I know it's small, but you can picture what a sand timer looks like. And that if something is increasing, if I flip this upside down and the sand begins to fall into the bottom, if something is increasing, something is also decreasing. And so if our love is increasing, then that means our hate has to be decreasing. And if our trust in God is increasing, then our control must be decreasing. And I thought that this illustration was just so beautiful, and I especially loved it with the theme and the focus of what I want this Bible study to be about, and that's that, I want us to be unified as sisters in Christ. And I've said this almost every single video, that I really want us to come together and to be unified in what we're studying and what God is showing us. And even though it's going to look different for all of us, we have that common ground to stand on. And so, in saying that, if our relationships, if our unified relationships are increasing, that means our isolation must decrease. So with this thought in mind, I've actually asked Taylor, you can see the open chair here, and I'm going to choke right as she comes in, to come sit with us through this one. Welcome, Taylor.
Hi, everybody.
So this is what I want this to be about. I know that it's just been me so far, but honestly, even though it may be through a screen this time, this interaction should really be happening. Even if it's typed words, I want us to sit down together, even if it's spiritually or through a computer, and be discussing this and talking about things. So with that in mind, I'm going to talk about, first of all, the video. We're just going to go through the week, Taylor and I, and we're going to discuss it. So from the video, first of all, I had to start out with the false illusion of control. It was amazing. It was from video 4, is that correct? Video 4, so it was the one that you watched last week, but it showed that if we think that we're going to control a situation, that really we're saying we don't trust God in it. And I had to mention this because we are a team leading teenagers. We're in a leadership position inside the church, and this is one you will struggle with. If you haven't yet, just trust me, you're going to get there. Because you will invest so much in your relationship. That was what she talked about, the madness and the gladness of investing your life into people. When you invest so much into them, then you want to control their situation. You hope that you can make them make that right decision, and ultimately you can't you?
You can't make their decisions for them.
You cannot, and it just kills you sometimes because you want to smack them when they don't. But in youth ministry, that's the madness. You guys may come to TFI every week, and you may think it's completely hopeless. That these kids are never getting it. They never make any right decision. They don't do the right things. They don't say the right things. But there's always that one moment where you are relieved because someone finally did. And I have to mention Shelby. Now, Taylor knows this story, but I was thinking about it, and most of you don't. If you don't know, there are a lot of Shelbys. I'm referring to Shelby Gazelle, and I'm sure she just about fell off of her chair sitting there. I'm so sorry to bring you up. But she only came to us, what was it, 2 years ago? 3, maybe?
I don't know.
It might have been 2 or 3 years. I know it's not beyond that. We haven't been here long enough. But 2 or 3 years ago, we put on a girls' retreat, and it was in the winter over Christmas break, and Shelby came for the very first time. She had never been in Dayton Christian Center, and she came because a friend invited her. It was like a last-minute thing, and she loved that girls' retreat. She got so much out of it. I mean, God just showed up and worked in her life, and it was one of those, moments for Taylor. We had planned this big thing, and people got sick. People had to go to funerals. It was one of those where you
hand-wrote letters to people that did not show.
Yes, we kept their bags for 2 years, waiting for them to come back. Hand-wrote and prayed over them individually, and I think 3 girls showed up. Four girls showed up. And it was one of those, okay, at that point you're thinking this is the madness part. However, Shelby Gazelle came to that and she never left. And now she is leading, or she is with you on our leadership team.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
It's one of those gladness things that even though there's so much gladness, or so much madness, there is always that gladness story that will keep you going for 2 to 3 years after that. So, Taylor, on day 1, is there anything that you got out of day 1, especially that you wanted to mention?
Day 1 is highlighted, underlined. I got everything out of day 1. I think I got everything out of this whole week. And the whole theme of the week is taught by God. And that's been my heart cry for like the last month. So just even reading that, I was like, yes, God, this is for me. I think personally it spoke to me because it just, it was like, Taylor, this is what I've been telling you forever. You know, like this, it was just one of those where it was like just confirmation of what God was already telling me. It wasn't necessarily that I have a problem so much with fear or anything like that, or love. It's just, how do I spend my free time? You know, if that time with God increases, then, you know, that kind of balance. It was for me, it was that.
So which are you feeding, the good or the bad type of
Exactly.
thing?
Which animal are you feeding?
I actually, the verses at the bottom of page 92, you were to compare the verses and it said, what conclusion could you draw from these 2 verses? And my conclusion was that bad or good, they both have the potential to increase.
Yeah, exactly. That was what I got to.
Okay, so day 2, I'm actually going to read her the personal discussion question. It says, share about someone who learned biblical truths straight from God, apart from textbook training or a human teacher.
So when I was in London, the minister, the leader of the church that I was working with, we were driving, we were going, it was just he and I, we were heading to a conference that we had to go to, so we were on top of the double-decker bus. It was really cool. But he was asking me about my family, and I was telling him how everyone in my family was Christian, and he looked at me and said, how did that happen? You know, and I was like, oh, well, that's kind of awkward. Never thought about that being weird. But he was telling me that he grew up in a family that were pretty agnostic. You know, they didn't deal with God in any sort of way.
Wow.
You know, and so he told me then that he came to know God when he was just a little boy, when he was reading the C.S. Lewis novels about the Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Wow.
And I remember I'd only ever seen the movie. I thought the movie was great, but those books don't really go into specifics about, this is about Jesus, and this is about, you know, God, Jesus sacrificing himself for you. It's just this way that the Holy Spirit was able to speak to this little boy's heart and make him go, hey, there's something here, you know.
Just knew somehow.
Yeah, and so that's how he became a Christian. And nobody preached at him, nobody did anything. It was just that, like, literally God just sought him out through a book.
That's
and then
crazy.
he done. Yeah, pretty cool.
Wow. Okay, so day 3. Flip through your thing. What did you get out of day 3? Now, I'm going to laugh at this point while she looks through day 3 because why I'm asking her and not answering because I really haven't done the homework. And I will say, I came and I told her tonight when we came to film that this is the first time I've ever had to watch a video that I had not completed all of the homework. I am one of those students that if you tell me I have to read and I have to do all this, I will do it before I come to class, even if I stayed up till midnight the day before doing it. But at this point, and you guys hear me talk about this, my 2 college classes overlap, and I'm sleep deprived. So it just didn't happen. But I have to say that to you guys because I want you to know, I mean, we're real too. There's days that we're doubling up on homework to try to make up for it. You know, there's days that we miss homework, and you know, we just keep going. And the next day we pick it back up, or maybe we do too if we have the time. But you know, don't feel bad. If you want to stay up with the group and you don't get all your homework done, it's okay. If that's what you can do and that's what you want to do, that's okay with us, just so you know. So, day 3.
Day 3. So there was this quote, and it was the 3 steps that she lines out in day 3. And number 2 was mind your own business. And she highlighted something, and I just kind of highlighted it further because it really jumped off the page to me. And it was some things we cannot handle knowing and still love like we are called to love. Only Jesus can maintain an unwavering, healthy affection while knowing all things, reading all hearts, and seeing behind all doors.
That's good. That's good. That one, even though I haven't done the homework, really speaks to me with a pastor as a husband. Because when I first started, I had never been in that type of ministry. I mean, my parents, my dad was a deacon and my mom's Sunday school teacher. They both were Sunday school teachers. But I'd never had like a pastoral, person in my family. And when he became a pastor, it would bug me because he would like have meetings or he would have counselings and I would want to know what happened. And he would always tell me, I'm not telling you these things, not because I don't trust you with it or because I don't think you need to know or whatever. He says, I'm not telling you to protect you. And I always used to get offended because I was like, what is that supposed to mean? Like, I can handle it. I was that big, bold, proud person that thought I could handle anything. But when he finally, there was a couple of incidences where he could tell it really bothered me that I didn't know. And we're not talking about personal counselings, just need to verify that. Those are completely confidential. When we say they're confidential, it's even between Nick and I. These were like, like business meetings about the church that where, the church was headed or what was going on in the church. And I was like, why can't I know these things? I'm co-youth pastor with you. I should know these things. And so he finally opened up and told me some of them. And it's only like after that, like that whole thing of innocence is bliss. And once you know, you can't take it back. And I realized, sadly the hard way that I started harboring bitterness towards people in the church.
Yeah.
Because of things that I knew had been going on. Well, him as a pastor and as a man, men can handle things like that. They can handle hurts or, words said and get over it.
Yeah.
Us women, we get protective and claws come out and we hold that bitterness forever. And it's not healthy. And it was only through learning the hard way. And I think he realized, I think God in his wisdom showed him that I just had to learn that lesson because I'd never experienced it. And I learned it the hard way. And now when he, starts to say, I don't know if you want to know, I'm always, oh, don't tell me. I do not want to know. Because when I knew those things, it was hard for me to love the people in the church the way I should be loving them or the way that I should be ministering to them or wanting to minister to them. And I couldn't because I was mad at them. Well, I'm not going to minister and love on someone that I'm mad at. And so now I understand it that we shouldn't want to know all things. That, I would much rather not put my nose in your business, and then regret knowing it later, if that makes sense. So anyways, that I've lived through. And as, you on a leadership team, that's another one of those that, I hope you don't learn that the hard way. When Nick always says there's things that you don't know about, don't always be so quick to judge of why he's not acting on something or why he is acting on something.
That's true.
That there really are things behind doors that he knows that he's making these decisions based upon, and you just need to trust him. I've learned to do it. I'm just telling you that if you learn it the hard way, it gets ugly, and you'll have to learn. It's called the hard way for a reason. Just believe me on that. So, anyways, okay. Day 4 was what did you learn on day 4? I didn't read it, so I don't know.
Day 4 was pretty much talking about since we believe, and basically that was the theme of it. And basically it was since we believe, we have hope. We were not hopeless like the people who didn't believe and then die.
Yeah.
And so day 4, and it's funny that you say that quote about ignorance is bliss, because she talks about that, and she asks you like to explain why ignorance is not bliss in that situation, and that's pretty true if you think about it. But anyways, what spoke to me out of day 4 was basically that we have hope because we do know and because we do believe. And just recently I ran into a friend who was at her wit's end, and literally like that was her text message to me. I can't handle this. And basically when I went to talk to her, it was just that hope deprived makes the heart grow sick. You know what I mean? And so to be without hope is probably just the darkest place that you can be, because you can go through tons of terrible, you can walk through the valley of the shadow of death and still have hope.
It's true.
But when you're without hope, any situation is dark. you know. So I think that's what spoke to me, was just the hope of hope.
Yeah. I think I was telling Taylor that I'm actually, one of my college classes I'm taking, it's a class in the UB Sleep Deprived, is History of Western Civilization. And it goes through all the way back, you know, to the Greeks, the Egyptians, the Greeks, the Hebrews, the Romans, and all these things. And it was interesting because back in the Egyptian time and in the Greeks, you know, where they thought that everything was ruled by gods, and you lived your life simply to appease all these gods, that they really drove home the point that their thinking was complete hopelessness.
Yeah.
There was no point, that everything was hopeless. They had no free will, they had no free thought. Like, they had to live every second and do everything to appease all these gods, and there was gods in everything. That's what they believed. Yeah. And they brought out like the poetry and the literature at that time, and it's just complete despair. Yeah. And I thought, you know, like, we know people in America that have that, but I can't imagine the entire culture. There's not a single one that doesn't.
There's no voice of hope.
There's no voice of hope. I can imagine that. Like, I can't grasp that. So day 5, we will end with this. The personal discussion question that you had was, what are you most curious about concerning end time events? So we leave you with that question as you start session 6, that I want you to post, you know, what are you most curious about considering end time events? We will see you ladies on session 6.